Hello and welcome back to Oliver Clatworthy Music. And in today's video is something a little bit different. I'm going to be interviewing Katie from Front Room Songs, and she's a programmer for the Summer by the River Festival in London. And I'm going to be heading up to London in about 5 days' time when this video comes out to see Die Twice and Pack of Animals and Trampoline, who are headlining that night. And also Katie manages Die Twice, so I'm going to chat to her about all things grassroots music and, obviously, Die Twice. So let's get straight into it. So I'm now joined by Katie from Front Room Songs, and we're going to talk a little bit more about just like everything relating to Front Room Songs, managing Die Twice, and everything in between. So Katie, I want to
Okay.
start. How did you start Front Room Songs, and like what was your first experiences of like wanting to start the business?
Um, well, it's quite an interesting story actually, because it started as a fun project, side project from my work, which was nothing to do with music at all. And back in that point, I had made friends with quite a lot of touring American bands, mostly from the sort of alt Americana scene. And one of the things about a lot of those bands is because America is so vast, sometimes the way that they tour from city to city is to do house concerts on their way. So they're on the road all the time. And I had a very good friend, Felix, who played washboard, funnily enough, in a band, and he used to stay with us occasionally. And I kept saying to him, I love this idea of house concerts. And he looked at my front room. He was like, you should totally do it. And this kind of rumbled on for quite a while. And then my daughter was going to Zambia on a like one of these volunteering trips and needed to raise money. And we came up with this idea of doing front room gigs where we cooked food, we had live music, and um, that she would help me make all the food and some of the ticket sales from that, and the rest would go to the artist. I've never actually taken a penny from my front room gigs, but it just kicked something off and it became this really incredible community. I had people who came, like we had a couple that used to come from Belgium regularly to our house concerts. And after a little while of doing it, we did our own festival 2 years in a row, little 500 capacity festival. And um, we just kind of carried it on. We'd raised the money for my daughter's trip, and we'd actually funded another student and made a significant contribution to a third student's funds as well. And once we'd done it, we just carried on doing them. And I don't really quite know how it happened, but after a year of doing them, I got offered a stage at Wilderness Festival off the back of it. And I did my first, well, it was 10 years ago this year. This is my 10th
Oh,
anniversary
so
at Wilderness
20,
Festival.
2014 that was.
Yeah. I did my first, well, so a year after doing my first front room gig, I found myself programming a stage at Wilderness Festival. And I realized I was enjoying doing the music way more than I enjoyed my day job, because it was a lot of fun, and I was reconnected with music in a way I hadn't done for years and years. I used to spend a lot of my time going to gigs when I was younger, and then when I had a family, it became just put to one side of it. But yeah, I was just going loads, and so loads and loads of gigs and meeting loads of musicians, and kind of embedding myself in a community. And I just sort of woke up one day and realized that I really, really wanted to do this full time. So I just quit my job there and then with no plan. And Front Room Songs was kind of formed. And then fast forward to 2018, I found myself programming Summer by the River Festival, which at that point was 2 months long. It's now 3 months long, but it was 2 months long at that point. And yeah, and that year I incorporated as a Front Room Songs Limited. So that's the sort of
Ooh.
very in a nutshell journey of Front Room Songs. So it's 9 years ago this year that I quit my day job.
So when you're programming the stage, like what thoughts go into? I'm guessing you book the bands. Is
Yes,
that right? So what
yes.
thoughts go into booking bands for those gigs?
For Wilderness Festival, I guess that's a bit more of a showcase of what I'm really digging at that moment in time. So I'll always try and find a headline act that is going to be, like a reasonable profile. I've always punched above my weight with Wilderness. I mean, the budget they gave me that first year was minuscule, absolutely minuscule. How I managed to put 5 bands together for that, I don't really know. But I've always tried to kind of horizon scan bands that I think are kind of coming through or who particularly stand out in their genre. It's not very genre specific. I've always jumped between genres. I've put folk on, I've put punk on, I've put Afrobeat, jazz, you name it. I've put it on quite a lot of Latin stuff as well over the years. So it's just really whatever any artists that I think are kind of excelling in their particular genre that stand out to me and that I can afford, obviously.
Yeah.
My budget's never very big.
Would you always say like keep putting grassroots bands on like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
lineup?
It's really important, and that's one of the things I learned from doing the house concerts was how important the small gig circuit is to new bands. I didn't know when I first started doing front room songs. I didn't. Most of the artists who play in front room songs come away with about £400, sometimes as much as £600, because all of the money from the tickets goes to them, other than the cost of the ingredients for the food. So I had no idea at that point because I hadn't been in, I put gigs on when I was sort of 18, 19, but I hadn't tried putting gigs on since then. And I had no idea how much that meant to those bands, and how different that was from their general experience of playing gigs in small grassroots venues who can't afford to pay those kind of fees. So they were playing to small, really attentive audiences who and getting paid really well for it and fed. So it became very popular. I was having people like, knocking on my door to play. And yeah, so it was just a really beautiful thing. And I suppose I've tried to kind of, a lot of it's about kind of honoring the artist because I don't think artists get enough praise or recognition for what
Yeah.
they do. Artists are asked to play for pennies, or for exposure. And I think there's not enough recognition goes into the amount of work that goes into being a performing artist, whether that's songwriting or playing or whatever, performing, the hours and hours of practice, the cost of the equipment. So I'm a really big advocate of grassroots music. And actually my stage, both at Summer by the River and Wilderness Festival, really allows me to do that. And I have a couple of another little side hustle, which is working with a festival promoter called Global Local, who do lots of stages. They do everything from Festival to Glastonbury to Wilderness, and I have a small roster of artists who, then they all have to be grassroots, unrepresented artists that kind of fit their genre. Yeah, that's the one. But yeah, so I think supporting emerging artists is very much what I'm about. I
Yeah.
think that's the bit that really gives me joy, I
Yeah,
guess.
I would say I think with me as well, I love supporting grassroots artists as well, like on my channel,
Yeah,
because like if I did a chart topping artist, is the chart topping artist gonna care? Absolutely not.
no.
Um,
They might do. They might do. You'd be surprised, Oliver. You'd be surprised.
will I get copyrighted? Definitely.
Yes, probably. But
But
there are probably artists that maybe a higher profile who you would be surprised. And I think that's one
yeah,
of that surprised me was the artists that were prepared to come and play my front room gigs, who, some of them had record deals and, none of them were big household names, but they were certainly quite well established artists in their field.
for
Um,
example,
or
trampoline.
well, trampoline, yeah, they're playing at Summer by the River. I get a bit more scope at Summer by the River. Obviously, it's a bigger stage, a little bit more budget than I might have at Wilderness. There's a lot of prestige though in playing at Wilderness Festival. So again, I can often punch above my weight. There, last year we had Beans on Toast headlining. This year we've got Cosmo Pike. So we're for a smaller stage, we can kind of punch above our weight because it's a really beautiful stage and so on. And Summer by the River, it's in such an iconic setting and it's such a beautiful place to play that once an artist has played there, they want to come back. for definite, because where else could you perform on a stage in an amphitheatre looking at, looking towards Tower Bridge? There isn't anywhere else with quite that vibe. It's an exciting place to play. Um, so yeah, we're very lucky, actually. I'm very lucky to do what I do.
I'd never heard of, like, before 2 years ago when Die Twice performed there. I'd never heard of Summer by the River, and I don't know how, because I've been in London while it's
No,
on.
there's people who live in London
Yeah,
have no idea it's there. And every week I meet people and they go, how did I not know that this was here? And it's a bit of a funny one, really. It's not a well-known festival. It's not like one of the big London outdoor festivals. It's very under the radar. I mean, it's essentially a community festival, but
yeah.
it kind of punches above its weight, partly because the relationship that I built with BBC Introducing has really kind of helped it. Partly just sort of relationships I've built with managers and labels and people who, they want those kind of opportunities for their artists to perform. It gives people a completely new audience, because you never know who's going to be turning up there. It's an after work crowd, it's tourists, it's people who live locally, so what most of the artists will say is they find they get a lot of social media traction just from playing there, just because it's a totally untouched audience, untapped audience.
Plus, it's free entry as well,
And
so
it's free. And it's
literally
free.
anyone. It's
What's not to
outside
like?
and free entry, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
anyone
yeah.
can come down.
And when we get some amazing, like over the years, we've had some incredible, not necessarily names you'd have heard of, but incredible touring bands that have come from overseas who are on their way to maybe Glastonbury or WOMAD Festival or one of the others, who need a London gig in order to just to help fund the tour. And they don't necessarily want the pressure of a ticketed London show because they might not be well known enough in London. So they get the London show, um, and they get to help fund their tour, and play in a great place. So, we had a 15-piece outfit from the Lindigo Islands a few years ago, which was quite extraordinary. The other week we had the Zawosi Queens who are from Tanzania. So we kind of get like a real interesting mix of bands coming to play. So it's not just the sort of grassroots London indie bands and so on. It goes much, much broader than that. And we do a lot of community projects as well, lots of community dance groups, singing groups, choirs. So we really kind of pack the program out with lots of opportunities for young people as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask next. So with Wilderness Festival, has there been like a standout act you remember from the past 10 years?
There's a duo called The Breath, who the singer is Rena Connolly, who is an extraordinary vocalist. She first known for singing with a band in Manchester called Honeybee, who again, not a particularly well-known name, but on the festival circuit, they're absolute stalwarts. Her voice is astonishing, and she formed The Breath with Stuart McCullum from the Cinematic Orchestra and won the BBC Radio Folk Award. She's Folk Singer of the Year, I think last year or the year before. And that was truly breathtaking. Really, really stunning performance. I think one that stopped people in their tracks. Last year with Beans on Toast, I mean, he's always such incredible value for money anyway, at any festival. People love him. So yeah, probably those. Well, there's a rapper from Bristol called Disraeli who did a set for me. I nearly got Lost Wilderness their license because I let him run a minute over his set time because everyone was having such a good time and he hadn't quite finished the tune, and I let him run, and suddenly they pulled all the sound. They literally just ran in and pulled all the sound mid performance, and he carried on acoustically for a little bit longer. But it was it was an epic performance. Crowd went nuts, absolutely nuts. That was exciting to watch.
So I wanted to ask next, has there been a standout act at Summer by the River you've like organised?
Oh gosh, there are many. Trying to think. Well, obviously, I'm going to say Die Twice because that was so random. That first appearance was so random, so last minute, and such a surprise. Because I wasn't expecting anything at all. Because all I knew was they're a bunch of teenagers from Exeter. So, and I was worried that no one would show up, because they'd come in at the last minute. It was supposed to be a rapper from East London called Barney Artist, who has got quite a big following, but he'd cancelled because he was sick. So Die Twice, obviously, I'm going to say that. But oh gosh, um, they're all really different. Oliver, it's very difficult for me to pinpoint ones that really, and oddly, because it's so long and because I've been doing it for so long, they sort of, the previous years sort of fade each year. I mean, actually, when Barney Artist performed the first time, he came as part of BBC Introducing. Talk Show, who performed with BBC Introducing, they were a band that really, really stood out for me. That was a pretty epic set. Welly last year absolutely blew me away. They were incredible. That band from the Lindigo Islands, 15 drummers and musicians on a stage, is something else. But I think mostly, actually, it's when the crowd is having a really, really good time. I really, really like, I love that. I can't.
We're going to move on to a little bit about Die Twice now. We're going to aim in at three key, actually
Okay.
four key points. So I want to talk about first, what was your experience? You briefly touched on it, but I want to go into detail on it more. What was your first experiences meeting them for the first time?
They're nuts. They literally like blasted into the scoop when they arrived and were literally running everywhere. I had a photographer working for me over the summer, Tallulah, and I said, "Oh, can you do some photos of them while they're here?" And I kid you not, probably none of those photos, all four of them are in them, all five of them were in there at that point. They're just like, they were literally running all over the place. We lost control. But so a lot of fun. And their set really stood out to me. You know, there were songs, a different shade of green still always blows me away.
I
Like
was listening to that just before this interview as well. It's one of my
it,
favourites.
and played live, it's, I mean, it's, and it's it was astonishing to hear such a young band play a song with that level of maturity. I mean, you know, particularly given how much they've just been running around like lunatics. It's like the as I say, the maturity of the songwriting, the maturity of the performance, you know, and at that point, it wasn't by any means perfect. They probably hadn't had a lot of time to prepare. They played quite a long set because it was my Sunday afternoon. It was supposed to be like 90 minutes or something, and that's quite a lot to ask of a young band.
Yeah.
So, but they carried it off, you know, and I just, the confidence with which they performed, I thought they were incredible.
And when did you decide you wanted to take them on and manage them?
Well, it wasn't immediate. I remember going home and saying to my lovely husband Al, that band's going to be huge. I don't know when or how, but they are going to be huge. Um, but I kind of kept in touch with Ollie a little bit. I'd said to him I could get them some other gigs in London. I put them in touch with a couple of venues, with Magic Garden and Amazing Grace, and yeah, and then I think I just initiated a conversation about playing at Summer by the River again last year, and it sort of just rolled into a conversation. I wanted to manage a band for a long time. I probably wanted to manage a band for the last 10 years, but I'd never really seen a band that I wanted to manage, if that makes sense. And I don't know, I just think that they've got so much potential. It's really exciting to work with them.
I think my next point is, like, what has there been a standout gig that you've watched them play?
Green Door Store, the first time they played down there in Brighton, when they opened for Fever Rouge, they absolutely nailed that gig. It was really, I mean, it was incredible. It was incredible. The vibe in the room was incredible. Obviously, the Phoenix this year,
Yeah.
incredible. Um, They played the first time they played in London after I started working with them. They played at Dreambags Dragula Shoes for Fierce Panda Records, and it was in this little place. Dreambags Dragula Shoes is a little sort of basement bar with a stone floor and slightly dodgy PA and lighting. It was actually incredible, and they were absolutely brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant. It was the first time, really. It was just before Ollie went travelling. So, but it was the sort of first couple of gigs they did with me. They did one in Brighton, and then they came and did that one in London. Yeah, and then Ollie went travelling, and then they came back and they did the Hawley Arms, and that was pretty special as well. So it's kind of when I really knew that I'd made the right decision to work with them. But Phoenix this year, absolutely incredible. Paper Dress Vintage in London, also absolutely incredible. They're all favourites for different reasons.
Yeah.
They don't really do a bad gig.
No, I've never seen them do a bad gig at all.
No. I've seen them be a little bit more kind of loose and
Yeah.
Scrappy's not the right word. I don't know quite what the word is, but yeah, sometimes it's a bit looser, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, and then other times they're so on point musically. They're so tight. But the best thing about them is they always look like they're having an amazing time on stage.
Yeah. So I actually messaged the boys earlier.
Did you?
In the Die Twice interview group chat that we created months ago.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I put, hey guys, I'm interviewing Katie tonight. I'm going to do at one point, so Die Twice asked this question. What question would you ask her? Right. So that all four of them have sent in their questions. I'm not going to tell you who sent in which questions.
Okay. I'm going to guess. Go on.
First. So you're going to answer the question. Then at the end, I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Who like.
Am I allowed to guess?
Yeah. But if you guess and you guess right, but you're going to see by my face. So, yeah. so the first boy has put, who's your favourite member?
That's got to be Billy. Yes. It would only be Billy. And as he asked the question, I'm just going to say Billy, because it's not true, but it'll make him happy if I say it's Billy. They're all my favourites.
Yeah. And the next one is, how much do you love Die Twice?
I love Die Twice a lot. Can you tell? I think they're an astonishing band.
Yeah.
They're phenomenally talented, and they are also really lovely human beings as well.
Yeah.
Like they've got it in spades.
And the next one is, what's your favourite song by Die Twice?
It's a really interesting question. I really love Different Shade of Jean because it kind of personally resonates with me. I love Paris, but I'm really excited about Art of Dying, which you haven't heard the recording of yet. But you will.
Is that the song they performed after Lady in the gig?
Probably with a spoken word part at the beginning.
I can't remember what
C'est la vie chorus.
Oh yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, the recorded version is going to blow your mind, and it will be coming out this year.
Well, I read the press release for the Phoenix gig, and it said Paris is the first of 6 new tracks.
It is. There were 6 tracks recorded. Well, they actually recorded 12 tracks.
That's enough for an album.
Yeah, and we took 6 of them forward for production. But yeah, they wrote 6 brand new songs in that week, in 4 days.
Apart from, 6 brand new songs along with other 6 they
that
recorded.
They had been playing for a while but hadn't recorded. So yeah, so 12 demos, 6 tracks taken forward. Yeah. 3 of those are new songs. 3 of those new songs are in the wings, maybe to be worked on at a later date. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think I've got three favourites of mine for Die
Go on.
Twice. Actually four which I just really love.
Yeah,
The first one is Different Shade of Green, especially the part where they played at the Phoenix and Ollie goes, "This song is dedicated to me."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
that was like that. Just I wasn't expecting that.
yeah, 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 yeah. Really beautiful.
Yeah, and I really love Evelyn, and
Yeah,
obviously,
actually, I should have said Evelyn as well because it's really special to me. Very, very special to me because it was written in my living room,
yeah,
in that front room where all those gigs took place. They wrote Evelyn, so it will forever be special to me.
yeah. And obviously, when this video comes out, this video is releasing on the 10th of August before Die Twice play at Somewhere by the River. And obviously, my Evelyn review would have come out a few weeks ago. And my Coca-Cola review. So go and watch that if you haven't already.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I will go and watch your Coca-Cola review. So, how many questions did you ask me there?
So that was my third one. So I've got one more to
Okay,
go
okay.
from them. How far do you think Die Twice can go in the industry?
Well, I mean, the sky's the limit, is it not? That's the plan. That's what we would hope for.
So,
But it's a combination of talent, hard work, and luck. But if things, if they keep doing what they're doing, there's no reason why they shouldn't really have a big impact.
so the first question was who's your favourite, and you thought that was Billy.
Yeah,
You were convinced that was Billy.
yeah. Who was that?
You're gonna. It was Ollie.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, Ollie, you're my favorite.
I was like, in that moment, I was thinking, oh, right. And then Jake put, "How much do you love them?"
Yeah, I
And
can see Jack asking that question.
Billy said, What's your favourite song?"
Yeah,
And then Finn was, "How far do you think Die Twice can go?"
yeah. But he knows. He knows what I think. They all know what I think. They all know the answers to all of those questions. They all know the answer to all of
Yeah.
those questions. Sure.
And
People should go to more gigs.
yeah.
If I had any message, like I went to see Elton John the other year at the O2. Somebody actually gave me a ticket, and I mean Elton John's a legend. You go and see him if somebody gave you a ticket, right? You wouldn't, And I sat there like about 10 miles from the stage, it felt like. And I just felt a bit sad that people were paying £200-300 to go and see Elton John, but won't spend £5 or £10 going to see a band in their own town,
Yeah.
and that all the venues are closing down because people aren't supporting local live music. And where are the next Rolling Stones, Elton John's legend bands going to come from if people don't support grassroots music, if there isn't more investment in grassroots music? I feel really, really strongly about that. And part of the reason for kind of keeping doing what I'm doing is because I really, really believe in grassroots music.
Yeah, I firmly believe in grassroots music because there is like, if you look at, yes, just look at Taylor Swift, then I look at like someone else who's grassroots, I'm thinking that grassroots band is better.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm not going to knock Tay Tay. I mean, she's in her field, she's done amazing things, but it's a different thing. It's a completely different thing, isn't it? And I mean, I wouldn't knock any artist that's stayed the distance, even artists I don't particularly like. If they've managed to stay the course and are still performing, 5, 10, 15, 20 years more, then they kind of deserve recognition for that, even if the music isn't to your taste, and even if you scratch your head as to why people like it. But yeah, I think, but it all should start in those little venues. That's how it used to be.
Yeah.
And it's not just about those bands, it's about things for young people to do. I had loads of gigs to go to when I was
Yeah.
your there's loads of places. I mean, one of the other things about reasons I put the gigs on in my living room is because Redhill, where I live, used to have loads of venues, and they've all gone. There's not a single venue left. There's not, there's a couple of pubs that might put a covers band on in the corner, but there's nowhere for original live music anymore.
Yeah,
And that's from a place that had bands like The Cure, and I can remember in the 80s, all these bands played in the area. We had, the Lakers Hotel that was near me. I mean, there's a little place around the corner from me that um, is now a curry restaurant. The back in the day was a pub, and in the 60s it had one of the most famous folk clubs in the UK, and Paul Simon played there regularly.
mm,
Right? I mean, like, how mad is that? The Who played. I mean, it's just like the people who played in the town that I live in, and it's desperately sad to me that all of those things have
yeah.
gone.
Because like in Exeter, we've got the Phoenix, which it's a great venue. They're getting some really good acts in at the moment. There is actual bands I've heard of,
Yeah,
which for me is a good thing. If I've heard of
yeah,
a band, that means the venue's doing good things.
yeah.
And there's the Cavern, which is a bit touch and go.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the Cavern, to be
I still haven't
completely
been,
honest.
would you believe?
Eh, but the security is really strict there. They say IDs, please, and then it's just really strict about ID.
Right.
But
I
like
mean,
everywhere is.
Exeter's so lucky to
Yeah,
have a good live music venue that people who are under 18 can go to. I mean, and that's one of the amazing things about the Phoenix, isn't it?
yeah,
It isn't an over 18s venue, so there is somewhere for people to
yeah.
go.
Because Cavern
Um,
is 18 plus
yeah,
only now.
yeah.
And Move is sadly no longer doing live music organised by Move
Oh,
anymore.
really?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So it's only if you book the venue right.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, but I mean, there are other places where music is played, aren't
yeah.
they? Firehouse, and there seems to be lots of places where original music is played, um, even if they're not like proper venues as such. So, but I've been Exeter's a city, albeit a small one, and so in our cities, albeit shrinking, there are still quite a lot of live music. But it used to be that in ta lots and lots of towns would have two or three, I mean, yeah, would have been 7 or 8 places that had live music
Yeah.
on, lived of varying quality, obviously, but there were places for local bands, and yet the irony is that we have two local sixth forms that are producing incredible musicians. The FIFA Rouge boys are from Reigate originally. Uh, Disclosure are from Reigate. So we're still producing in the schools phenomenal artists who are going on, but they're all going off to Brighton and London and Bristol. We're not nurturing any homegrown talent. Not really.
It's just basically when a band announces a gig that I can go to, I've just booked tickets. That's
You
basic.
know what? I think that's kind of what I've done over the years. And sometimes I just book tickets. I don't know anything about the band at all. I like that discovery, and sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. Uh,
Yeah.
I did years and years ago. My friend thinks I've really got my finger on the pulse because years and years ago I randomly bought tickets to see some singer-songwriter at the Hope and Ruin in Brighton, and I just bought the tickets on the spur of the moment. I think I just heard her name, and we went, and it was Adele. She was playing to like 50 people, and I went with my neighbours because I just bought 4 tickets on spec and said, "Do you want to come to a gig?" And like literally 2 days later, she released Chasing Pavements, and it went to #1, and all of a sudden everyone was talking about Adele. And I have to say, I was a bit like, meh, okay, she's all right, got a nice voice. Yeah. I wouldn't have guessed at that moment that she was going to be a massive, massive star. Never in a million years. But yeah,
Wow.
but that's the beauty of going to a random gig, and that's the beauty of my like front room gigs. I think there's always that little thing, isn't there, that maybe you're watching a star of tomorrow, and uh, probably the biggest name we ever had to do one of our front room songs gigs was Youngblood.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a name I've heard of.
yeah. Well, lots of people have heard of him,
Yeah.
but at the time he was he was. I saw him play at the Great Escape in Brighton, and actually then, I mean, it was a much more simple setup, and obviously there wasn't all of the, I suppose, carnival around him, is the best way to put it. And he was phenomenal. He was absolutely phenomenal. And we had this incredible gig down at my friend's farm.
How
When
long
you,
ago was this then?
I'm thinking 2016.
So that was before we like got
Oh, hang
really.
on. Maybe later than that, 2018, maybe. I'd have to look it up. I can't
Hmm.
remember. It was the day he signed his record deal. I
Oh,
remember because he came and he said we just signed our record deal. And yeah, and we sat in the kitchen at my friend's house and talked about music. Yeah, so there's always that like alive with possibility that you might be seeing someone that
yeah.
you can dine out on for years. Well, that's what my friends think anyway. They like just this idea of people who are going to go on to be big names
Like
because you
I always get that feeling about Die Twice. I'm like, there's going to be one day where they're doing something massive. And I was like, that's my friends performing on that massive stage.
yeah. And
Like,
the thing is, this is why people should go to grassroots
yeah,
music venues because you never know who you're going to see. And like in 20 years' time, you'd be like, I was there right at the beginning,
yeah,
And there's something very gratifying about following a band all the way through from the beginning, and having seen them in the early days on a small stage, because it's never quite the same um, when they kind of go onto the big stages. It's a different experience. It's not better or worse, but it's just a different experience to have that level and to get to know the bands and be part of their story. It's a really great feeling.
yeah. I'd love to ask, is anyone, literally anyone, you would love to perform at one of your festivals? Just literally anyone.
Literally anyone, dead or alive.
Yeah, yeah,
Dead or alive. Well, obviously, I'm going to say like I'm gutted that I never went to see David Bowie while he was still alive. Really gutted that I never. And actually, David Bowie is someone I didn't really come to appreciate until much later because I was his early years. My cousin was really into him, and I think I was just a little bit too young at that point to really kind of get it. And then as I got older, I was like, oh my God, he is a creative genius. And yeah, David Bowie maybe, but I don't know. I think my wishes are quite they change from year to year. I mean, musically, the lineups I put on every year are different, and I'm always really excited about the bands I put on. That's that's the whole point. So, would it be better if I had like bottomless budget that I could book anyone? I don't know. I think I like what I'm doing.
So, if you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, watch my Die Twice and Coca-Cola reviews that I did a couple weeks ago, and thank you very much for watching.